Welcome back again. This is the last part of our webinar series, and we're going to be focusing on gender identity exploration and collaboration with other medical providers, schools, different support groups, and then along with addressing some potential legal dynamics and questions, and then reviewing some resources and putting everything together. So we as mental health providers, medical providers, we all have this really awesome opportunity to support all these families and caregivers of our trans youth and help them navigate a really complex system that can be confusing and again full of all kinds of misinformation and struggles. And we can really help to bridge the gap with awesome collaboration across multiple settings for our clients and their family members. So now that we have established this, hopefully, good rapport with our clients and their families and their caregivers and increased healthy support and understanding, we can move towards navigating different gender identity exploration and transition options and further collaboration with medical providers, educational systems, and again, other areas of support. Again, to note, this is not linear and these things can happen throughout the process at any time. So most importantly, collaboration as providers with caregivers, right? So we're encouraging and empowering positive caregiver and family strategies throughout. So providing our affirming support and care to our children, to their children, regardless of their gender identity, helping them to encourage creating a loving environment that encourages healthy communication from the child, exploring different affirmation desires, so pronouns, name, again, once doing public, um, understanding healthy transition goals that may be present for the trans youth, gender diverse youth, and knowing that we'll be able to encourage healthy collaboration with other systems and providers. We're walking with these families again to allow them the safe space to explore their identity, their kiddo's identity in a healthy way. And as we know from the very beginning, just one supportive person can make a huge difference in a trans and gender diverse kiddo's life. So just imagine what the positive impact of an entire team of supportive people, systems, and providers can do. So with a brief outline of different types of transition options, now that we're exploring gender identity, I'm going to go through these couple of slides a little more quickly, just as a general outline. And then we'll have a wealth of information and resources at the end to be able to go towards to learn even more and go a little deeper. Multiple of these things would be more an entirely different presentation to get deeper base knowledge for affirming options. So first and foremost, again, as we know, there are no medical or surgical interventions for children. They simply do not exist. What we do know is that we can explore with the child and we can walk with them and support their journey, giving them the tools that they may need. This can look like a variety of social transition options. Social transitioning refers to the non-medical steps that trans and gender diverse individuals may take to align their outward appearance, behavior, social interactions with their gender identity. And again, these changes are very personal. They vary by individual and they may evolve over time. Again, it's important to remember for caregivers to receive consent from their kiddo before talking with other people. Sometimes kids might want to explore at home instead of in public or even at school or at a different pace, and that is okay. For example, different types of social options. So identity exploration, multiple different types of identities that might pop up for a kiddo. So listening and being able to hear where they are and what the definition of those identities might mean for them is really important. Name and pronouns can be a very strong sense of affirmation for a kiddo who is exploring different options, especially when caregivers and adults get them right. So many of my clients will just light up when I go out of my way to address them appropriately or use their name and pronouns in different contexts. Kids can also explore these different types of names or pronouns within online communities or video game communities to be able to create different profiles. There's multiple different ways to be able to explore these things so that they can find what feels right to them. Social media can, again, like we talked about before, can be really positive for some kids in an appropriate way, to be able to find like a community together, and within reason to be able to buffer against any of the harms that social media can have. Different presentations can be helpful for kids to explore, so they can change all kinds of different ways that they present themselves to the world. Remember, gender expression doesn't necessarily have to match gender identity, but different trans and gender diverse youth can use expression to explore different types of gender identity and how they feel most comfortable. Finding different representation can be really helpful for kids as well, to see themselves in other people. And again, this does not lend to them changing themselves, but instead seeing themselves and feeling seen and heard by different people. We see the context of representation in the media and popular culture and like stuff like that. And sometimes it can be so life-giving for trans and gender diverse kiddos to be able to see queer representation and to thrive within that and understand it and just feel like a sense of belonging and being understood. Clothing, again, right? So this kind of goes in with expression, right? So we could change clothing or hairstyle or makeup, different types of accessories. A new hairstyle can be a really powerful tool for self-expression and exploration. And obviously, as we know, grow back. So that could just be something that, gender diverse youth and trans youth can play around with to kind of see what fits the best for themselves. And within social transitioning. Hygiene can be important too, different ways of taking care of yourself or trying different things, even with different types of more masculine, more feminine types of deodorant, or utilizing just different hygiene techniques can be helpful for trans youth and gender diverse kiddos to explore what feels comfortable and what can also help lead to gender euphoria with feeling more comfortable within their bodies and their presentation. Different types of exercising or muscle training. So you could try to redistribute different types of body fat that way as well to be able to kind of gather more of a presentation that they may want or feel comfortable with. Talking with family members and peers. So again, this is with consent from the kid, but a piece of social transitioning is being able to talk with other folks about this, again, if desired, to be able to continue to get affirmation and support. School and community support too can be a part of the process for social transitioning to be able to, again, allow like other aspects of self to be aligned with gender identity. Updating records, legal name change, gender markers, different things like that can be really affirming for kiddos too, and to also just set them up for success for their future by having everything match. Different support groups, right? So again, kind of finding more people that they can relate to and find a support system, especially working through a lot of the different potential discrimination or socio-political things that people might see or societal impacts and things like that. Having a solid group of peers of people can be really helpful to mitigate some of those impacts. Correct restroom usage. This can be very validating for trans youth and gender diverse youth as well. However, with an asterisk of care, comfort, and safety. And we want to make sure that our youth feel safe within their choices, and if they are not feeling safe to be in their affirmed, aligned restroom choice, then hopefully we can find one that is neutral or a single bathroom. So this is a big advocacy thing within the educational setting as well, to be able to hopefully advocate for them to go towards what they feel most comfortable. Voice therapy is also an option too for different trans and gender diverse folks down the line, to be able to consider to help to have a different way of presenting themselves that feels most comfortable and aligned with themselves. And I mean, there's even more with this too. This is just a snippet of different potential options. Again, this is something that can have even more research and ideas to validate and help their kiddos to live their authentic lives. Exploring medical options. Again, not linear. However, definitely time appropriate, age appropriate aspects. So, main thing again, medical interventions are decisions made with the child and the legal caregivers and medical team consent only. Social transitioning is typically the first part of the journey for a lot of trans folks. However, it can only go so far with helping them align with their gender identity. So sometimes medical options and medical care, evidence-based medical care, is important. And this depends on their gender identity, their age, their health, their personal goals. These medical interventions help align one's physical characteristics with their gender identity and help to alleviate some symptoms of gender dysphoria. Again, it's very important to remember that transitioning is a deeply personal journey and looks different for everyone. There is not one way to transition. So we as providers and clinicians want to try to avoid any assumptions and help caregivers to also avoid assumptions when they're listening to their trans kiddos about their feelings and opinions. So, as you can see, nothing about children on here because there are no medical interventions for children. There are only social and exploration. The first medical option that exists is for adolescents that have reached Tanner stage 2 of development, and that would be puberty delaying hormones. Puberty delaying hormone therapy, when appropriate, with the consent of a medical team and caregivers, are used to pause puberty-related changes that may cause significant distress within trans youth, so such as breast tissue development, menstruation, voice deepening, different types of body hair, multiple different things that come along with puberty can cause significant additional gender dysphoria for trans youth. So this can help alleviate some aspects of fear of the future, fear of increased gender dysphoria, and also just really put the pause button to allow youth more time to explore their gender identity. Instead of forcing a transition, forcing a development and going through puberty and then having to potentially have more surgeries down the road to be able to have a healthy transition. Delaying this medical care may worsen mental health symptoms for many young trans folks, and it could lead to future unnecessary medical interventions, such as top surgery for trans men who were not able to have puberty delaying hormones to stop breast tissue development. So we want to try to be as affirming and understanding as we can, work with a medical team for evidence-based medical care, understand all of the different positive outcomes, all the different risks, all the different implications, and make a good, informed decision. Puberty delaying hormones are fully reversible, and they can be a positive way forward to allow more time for exploration and to delay different types of puberty for the trans kiddo with the care of a medical team and evidence-based practice. Any and all medical interventions should be carefully monitored by the kiddo's medical team and doctors who specialize in transgender health for best care, safety, and well-being of the client. There are no surgery options for minors, and it is healthy to reflect on future affirming surgery options, especially when kids ask or adolescents ask, because there's conversations. You could also talk about fertility preservation options in a healthy way with adolescents who may be curious or asking questions, because there are different implications for transitioning throughout that could be just helpful to explore. And talking openly about these things can give really good informed decision making. There are different options in the future down the road for trans adults for potential vocal cord surgery to be able to take a look at, or hair removal or restoration, body contouring to be able to continue to shape the person's body in a way that they feel comfortable with for their presentation. So there's a lot of different options. I mean, there's even more than that. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is just a handful of different options that, again, all are there with proper medical care and consent. And as a note, WPAST, World Professional Association for Transgender Health, has the Standards of Care 8 that are important to review and be familiar with, because they are typically seen as the gold standard for trans health care for youth and for adults, and utilized with evidence-based medical care across many practice settings and providers. A few more notes on exploring medical transition options. Again, medical transition is with legal caregivers and medical team consent, and the assent from the potential adolescent for puberty delaying hormones, or adults later for other medical options. Again, it is so important to seek out appropriate and accurate facts, information, and empirically backed and evidence-based research. What I've included here is a website that has a list of medical association statements in support of healthcare for trans people and youth. I've included this in the resources and references page as well. This has a wealth of knowledge and so many statements of support from every major medical association. So it's important to have resources like this to be able to understand and continue to move towards accurate information and facts, and to be able to educate when appropriate and when necessary. All right, collaboration with mental health providers. So now that we've gone through our very brief overview of transition options, we can focus on healthy collaboration with other medical providers and community supports along the way. So collaboration with mental health providers can be a valuable component of support for trans individuals and their families. Mental health professionals can offer guidance, validation, tools to navigate challenges related to identity, relationships, and societal pressures, as we've seen so far. We can create a safe, non-judgmental, and affirming environment, again, to be able to hear all these things and put everything together. We're supporting caregivers through mental health impacts on their children, such as gender dysphoria, discrimination, societal pressures, etc. We're going through healthy gender identity exploration and support for transitioning. We're reflecting on the individualized nature of transition with social and medical interventions, medical benefits and risks, and further discussion with medical providers. We can address socioeconomic barriers such as insurance access or housing and help connect clients with resources. We can refer to affirming medical providers. So we can create a list or a basis of different medical providers within the area, and we can write gender affirming letters to be able to help our clients to access that care and review different resources with them and help review different benefits, risks, and different nuances with medical transitioning. We can serve as a great resource for caregivers or families who may have questions or concerns that would be more appropriate, like we've heard, to ask a provider rather than their child. And we can connect them and advocate for families. We can connect them with different supports or different locations, even like schools or dentists or hairstylists or stores who may have different affirming things for their kiddos, and connect with different resources, support groups, organizations. We as providers can be a valuable tool for families to be able to navigate all these complexities. Collaboration with educational system is also vital, of course. So advocating within the schools, we as providers can help empower caregivers and families to collaborate with the educational system, which is critical to ensuring a supportive and inclusive environment for our trans students. Schools play a significant role in fostering acceptance and safety and affirmation of a student's gender identity. and can be a place where our trans youth and gender diverse youth um, can hopefully feel comfortable and be able to thrive. As providers, we can empower caregivers to advocate within their different spaces of academics. Kids just spend a significant amount of time within the educational setting. So it's really important to try to work towards inclusivity and comfort so that they're not feeling essentially just a resting level of tension throughout every day of the week that they are in an area that is potentially not affirming to them. So again, as with everything, it's important to follow the lead of the child with what they may feel comfortable discussing with the school. So again, some kids may decide to not come out to the school, and remember, this is their journey. So we want to be able to follow their lead. We want to identify a trustworthy point of contact within the school to be able to kind of field some of these questions and help advocate on a caregiver's behalf. And encourage caregivers to talk to their child about what kinds of supports they would want in the school. So find out if they have any current or expected issues and discuss whether or not the kiddo wants to be part of the school meetings or not could be helpful. So if and when the kid wants to be involved in the school, again, finding the trustworthy person so that they can also have somebody to go to if they do feel discriminated against or denied access for something. Because we want to be able, again, to foster this comfortable and supportive environment so that these kiddos can just worry about learning instead of worrying about being denied access or discriminated against. So if the child feels ready, then we want to try to ensure that the kiddos' name and pronouns are respected in attendance records, classroom discussions, interactions with substitute teachers, things like that. So helping to navigate that within the educational setting would be important. And access to restrooms, locker rooms, so collaborate with the school to allow the kiddo to use facilities that align with their gender identity if they feel comfortable, or private options if preferred, would be really helpful. Dress codes, we want to try to address different dress code policies to make sure that our kids can be affirmed within their presentation and not forced to wear something that would cause more gender dysphoria. So again, working with this point person to see like how to best help facilitate that in a healthy way. Working with schools to address bullying concerns. So anti-bullying policies. It's helpful to encourage and support parents to confirm that the school has clear policies addressing bullying and harassment, specifically regarding trans students, and then confirm with the school what the plan would be if bullying happened to be reported. So if we start off by doing some of those proactive things, we're able to have those in place. So if that happened to come about, we already have an action plan in place to be able to work through that. And it could be helpful to kind of have some regular check-ins with different, your point person or different school counselors or folks from the school to monitor progress and address any of the emerging issues that might come about, just to make sure that we're staying on top of these supportive responses. Could be good. And checking and encouraging and empowering caregivers and family members to check in with their kids. Because sometimes kids just don't want to talk about it, until they're maybe like lovingly and empathetically prompted to be able to be like, hey, what's going on? To be able to learn about some of these things that might be going on or issues. Athletics and extracurricular activities. Also good to collaborate with the school to allow the student to participate in the activities that align with their gender identity per their comfort, and to explore different ways to continue to facilitate and create those areas of comfort and to address any potential issues or bullying that may arise. Knowledge of educational rights. So this will be Title IX or state laws. It's really important to be aware of these legal rights and be ready to potentially address them and acclimate yourself to the different ones. We're going to touch on legal landscape in a little bit too, so we're going to circle back to this. But it's important to know these different things and to stay up to date as we can be with the different legal landscape that might be happening, so that we can advocate in the most healthy way as we can. external resources and advocacy if needed. So if we're unsure about the legal landscape or just what we can do within schools and how we can best talk to schools, there are lots of different resources to be able to do this. And again, as providers, we can encourage families, and as providers, we do have the choice to be able to also help to advocate ourselves within schools. Again, that's a personal provider choice and preference. I have a lot of resources again at the end to be able to give some guidance on best language to be able to use with schools to be able to facilitate healthy progress and support. All of this is again within the best interest of the kids. Medical team collaboration. So we touched on this a little bit already. So we want to, again, recognize that gender diverse medical care is medically necessary. Collaboration with the medical team is vital in providing comprehensive and affirming care for trans folks and individuals, youth and adults. Effective teamwork ensures that all aspects of a person's health, physical, mental, emotional, are all addressed. So we want to make sure to address with caregivers different barriers to accessing care, whatever they may be, geographical, socioeconomic, availability, and be able to understand those different barriers and be able to move through them as possible. Assemble a multidisciplinary team as necessary, right? So you might have just multiple different factors going on and trying to collaborate together to have the best results and in the best interest of the kiddo. And to create an affirming network of provider referrals. So when I have a referral, I try to look at them and reflect on them as best as I can to make sure that the experience will be as affirming as possible from entering into the medical facility, working with the provider, and leaving. And I want to try to make sure to get some positive understanding of how that will be for my client and for their families, so as best as I can, and listening to different examples that may have not gone as well as they're hoping, to be able to reflect on my referral sources and continue to have a positive list of people. We're working with primary care physicians, pediatricians, endocrinologists, mental health providers, all kinds of different awesome medical teams, and coordination of care when appropriate for healthy decision-making opportunities for trans youth and their families. Again, shared decision-making and consent. And evaluating the appropriate timing for potential medical interventions. And this is a little bit of a moving target because this is with healthy exploration over time and understanding and development and communication. And overall, this is creating a unified plan that best supports the child's overall well-being and mental and physical health. Routine checkups, preventative care, and follow-up are also really important. No matter what anatomy might be present, because we want to make sure to take care of the person is taking care of their body and continuing to also have healthy transition goals at the same time, and to be able to work with an affirming medical team that can discuss this in a really healthy way that is validating and emphasizes everything that is in the best interest and within affirmation and support. And we want to make sure that we're monitoring transition-related medical goals that is in a healthy and medically based way possible. We also want to acknowledge that sometimes there is a bias that exists within medicine, mental health providers, and we want to work to eliminate some of this unconscious bias or intentional bias within the medical team through different trainings or advocacy or understanding, or being able to develop this plan to understand what might be going on and the different nuances involved. And also to acknowledge the intersectionality playing a role throughout everything and through all treatment, how race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status might impact client-patient experiences, along with societal experiences, generational trauma, different things like that. Everything we've talked about so far, how that all goes together to impact the client along with access to care and disparities in healthcare due to those geographic, financial, systemic barriers. So being able to be cognizant of those things within the medical team and making sure we're slowing it down and addressing things as they come. We want to advocate for clients who might be facing different discrimination in healthcare settings and being able to continue to create a healthy team full of information and support. Community support is also crucial. Those community support networks are just essential in ensuring that trans individuals have access to this holistic care and affirming environments. Community resources can provide emotional support, advocacy, practical assistance, and more, and they complement medical and mental health care as well. There's a lot of different options here too, so we want to identify important community resources. So to us LGBTQIA+ community centers that exist throughout the areas where the client may live, different advocacy organizations that you can connect them with, especially for their caregivers to understand different nuances. Online communities that are safe and appropriate can be helpful to connect with trans and gender diverse youth to create more of a sense of like being seen and heard and belonging, and other types of online communities for caregivers and families to also generate community support and understanding and be able to share their stories in a healthy and safe location. Positive role models too can also be a great way to build community and resources. Building relationships with community leaders can be helpful within different outreach efforts, different partnerships, understanding, and having allies together. Creating that referral network and resource list, really important to be able to continuously monitor and add to, because then you just have it there and you're ready to go. Facilitating access to support. So trying to help clients understand maybe some nuances of transportation, accessibility, looking at different financial aid opportunities, if there are different types of barriers, financial barriers involved, having inclusive programming knowledge. So making sure to look at different programs and make sure that there is inclusivity there when we are sending clients to different providers. And analyzing the resources again, and always making sure that they're staying up to date and that they're continuing to be supportive for our clients and their caregivers. Peer support networks for clinicians, for providers ourselves, are really important too, to have peer support so that we can continue to reflect on different things and grow. And of course, for clients and caregivers, different types of peer support. Enhanced cultural competence is also important for caregivers and families alike, and for us as providers. It's important to stay connected with all of those things so that we all in the community feel less alone, and we all can band together to be able to keep growing and moving forward, especially in the face of a lot of the things that we've already talked about, that may impact our clients, their caregivers, their family members, and ourselves as providers. All right. Addressing legal questions and unknowns. So everything that we reviewed can become even more complicated with an ever-changing legal landscape that we find ourselves in. So for the purpose, again, of this presentation, I'm just going to review some basics and talk about some ways to stay informed for your own practices and for your clients and their caregivers and families. And again, that could be like a whole other presentation to be able to understand even more specific nuances. But I'll make some suggestions about how to stay informed the best I can. All right, so first and foremost, navigating legal custody is really important for providers who are working with minors in general, right? So let's kind of address some of the navigation, which can be especially complex for trans and gender diverse kids, especially in cases involving disagreements or challenges related to the child's gender identity. Remember, the focus should always be on the child's best interest, affirming their identity, and ensuring that they have access to medically backed support and care. Okay, so first, legal custody refers to the right to make major decisions about the child's welfare, including healthcare and education. Physical custody determines where the child resides and the day-to-day caregiving responsibilities. Joint custody is when both caregivers share the decision-making responsibilities and or time with the child. So you can have joint physical, joint legal, or sole physical, sole legal. So sole custody is when one caregiver has exclusive rights to make the decisions and or care for the child. And again, above all else, we as providers, what we want to do is make sure that everything is in the best interest of our clients and work to create safe and supportive environments for all members, legal caregivers, and the client. We want to make sure that we are also engaging in neutral support of caregivers. We want to try to join with both caregivers, especially in cases of disagreements, especially to foster that understanding and growth. Because most of us as providers are not legal parenting evaluators. So it's really important for us to try to stay as neutral as we can, at the same time as advocating for our client's best interest. So the language that we use and write is very important. So staying neutral will help to navigate that and be able to have positive interpersonal communication with all members in custody agreements to be able to best facilitate the care for our clients too and try to join together. When in doubt of anything legal related, consult with legal professionals so that you can have the best up-to-date knowledge that you can to be able to make the best decisions for your clients. So when there is legal caregiver disagreements or caregiver disagreements in general, here's some things that we can do as providers to be able to try to help join together. And helping legal guardians navigate disagreements regarding trans care for the children requires a delicate, informed, and collaborative approach. And the focus, again, should always remain on the child's well-being and ensuring that they have access to affirming care and support. There's a lot of careful consideration here due to the unique medical, social, and mental health needs of trans and gender diverse youth. A lot of the tools we've already talked about are really important to use to implement during these disagreements and conflict. So you already have like a really good baseline of how you can join together with caregivers who might be struggling or disagreeing. So again, prioritizing the child's well-being, finding the common ground with those different support areas and being able to translate that to other supportive areas. Facilitating open communication, again, is especially important in these types of situations to create a safe environment for caregivers to process those concerns and information. We want to foster the space to hear concerns without judgment and to join with all caregivers, no matter the side of a disagreement. Again, the asterisk is we want to make sure that we're doing this in a safe way and in the best interest of our client. So again, using a lot of strategies that we've already talked about to be able to join together with parents, with caregivers, and family members to hear what's underneath and what might be going on for them, and to join together and to wonder aloud and to understand where they're coming from and where their opinions, biases might be coming from, to be able to join together, and to help to share education through reputable resources and evidence-based care, clarifying approaches that may cause harm, such as delaying medical care, and for kiddos that might cause some pretty significant accidental harm. Again, emphasizing that we know as providers that those are probably coming from a place of accidental harm, but they still can cause harm. So trying to evaluate the best way to use the language that we have and the skills that we have as providers to put all that together for a caregiver who might be struggling. Again, this is also coming from consent from maybe the other caregiver of the disagreement and also the kiddo, and how best to reach out to join together. And that might be through a phone call, that might be through an email if that's an appropriate way of communication that you, the provider, utilize. That might be through inviting the caregiver to come in to chat in person in your office. That might look different in different ways depending on the context, the dynamic, the situation. So trying to evaluate that type of moving target as well to be able to understand how to best move forward to have those more tough conversations, to address different aspects of conflict, to be able to join together to try to make the best decisions for everyone together, especially when there is joint legal custody. Because we want to help facilitate knowledge and understanding and support, and try to repair miscommunications that have maybe already happened. We want to make sure, again, to use neutral documentation because most of us are not parenting evaluators. So it's not our position to note any types of parenting evaluation or caregiver evaluation of one way or the other, right? So trying to reflect that neutrality so that we can best support all caregivers involved to continue to grow and move towards healthy medical decisions and healthy just decisions for their kiddo in general to foster the best growth and development. We want to try to avoid alienation as well. And by staying neutral, that can help avoid alienation of maybe one caregiver or another, so that, again, we can foster that understanding that we want to truly create a supportive environment for everyone. Because our main goal is collaborative decision-making and support for the kiddo. And as before as well, it's really important to celebrate success. We may see little successes as we continue to educate, join together, show support, create a healthy environment. We all as humans want to be seen and heard, and it's really important to reflect on these successes, no matter how small, to keep facilitating growth and movement. Will really help caregivers to know they're being seen. More specific legal rights of trans children and their families. So the overall rights of trans children and their families are vary depending on the country, state, region, local legal rights. These rights typically address different access to healthcare, education, social recognition, protection from discrimination, etc. So it's really, really, really important to know the nuances of these in the legal landscapes, especially as providers. We want to ensure legal caregivers, the child, medical team, they're all informed participants in decision-making again, and addressing the balance between the therapist and the client with trusting of different information. Kind of like we talked about before, making sure to have consent from the client before having these bigger conversations with caregivers and family members, just to create that comfort and trust and safety within our offices, to be able to talk with them about those communications with their caregivers, to be able to continue to foster growth and support. That increases the balance with the child's autonomy. So generally, caregivers have the right to consent to medical care for their children. Unfortunately, this is currently being impacted by trans healthcare restrictions in multiple states. Again, any medical care for minors needs the consent of a caregiver. So that is important to remember as a fact. And we'll kind of touch on some of the restrictions in a second too. There can be federal and state restrictions. Sometimes those are just completely different. So again, it is really important to make sure to be as informed as possible in a healthy way. We want to recognize the challenges that this has across the country currently. that we are seeing, a very uneven legal landscape for the trans and gender diverse community. Unfortunately, that is just the current reality. So again, we're seeing different restrictions at various levels, state by state, and this is also ever changing with different bills, court injunctions, legal challenges, stuff like that. So it's important to know that there's potential for legal landscape to change in various directions as we keep moving forward. And my biggest recommendation would be to continue to seek out legal consultation and professional consultation and stay informed through reputable sources. We want to document evidence-based care, professional recommendations that are appropriate and document in an appropriate and neutral way as we keep moving forward and navigating these different landscapes. And we also want to know and evaluate the different federal and state protections that we also have. We have Title IX and we have Title VII. Title IX is a federal civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in education programs and activities that receive federal funding. As a note, Title IX in the United States can still protect trans students, especially in Michigan, from discrimination despite the recent court strike down that you may have heard about. What happened was that Title IX in the U.S. protects students from discrimination based upon sex. What was struck down is the additional clarification of protection for gender identity specifically and the clarification for enforcement. It did not remove the full protection itself within the current/previous Title IX law. So that's important to remember as you're advocating within schools. It did create more of a gray area, so it's important to always double check your legal education rights federally and also specific to your state, and consult if you're unsure. Title VII protects against employment discrimination based upon sex and gender identity currently. And this could be important for caregivers who are advocating for their children within their employment setting, or minors who may be employed to know that they have those rights. Again, it's always important and helpful to consult with the legal team to know the full scope of legal protections when unsure. I could speak towards Michigan specifically because that is where I reside. We have many different legal resources within this state specifically. And whatever state you're in, it's really important to have your list of legal resources available for you as providers to be able to have yourself and to share for your clients and caregivers. Utilizing different resources for insurance advocacy can also be really important, and I have some tools for that also in the resources and references pages. Because there may be a point in time where we as providers might be helping with insurance claims or filing an appeal on behalf of our clients or things like that. So it's really important to have that knowledge a little bit at least ahead of time so that we can be ready for those moments to not delay care. In Michigan, we have recently was passed the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. In addition to that, it prohibits discrimination based on a person's sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression with regards to employment, housing, education, and access to public accommodations. So the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act was a real big win for the trans and gender diverse community to be able to have deeper protections against discrimination. Recently, we also banned conversion therapy, which prohibits the use of state and federal funds for harmful conversion therapy on minors. We also recently passed multiple bills to codify and improve the name change laws within Michigan to be able to have a more appropriate movement forward there. Michigan also just recently passed into law modernization of Michigan's legal name change process and enshrined transgender Michiganders' access to self-determination on birth certificates as well. And of course, the use of federal Title IX and Title VII can also apply in Michigan as well. And the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act also further increases that protection. So we can reflect a little bit on the current restrictions happening across our country as we continue to navigate the legal landscape. So this is a map of some of the current restrictions of gender affirming care in some of the other states. The Movement Advancement Project did research on this and the impact of the current trans healthcare bans. These bans and these bills have targeted trans youth by blocking their access to best practice medical care that is just backed by years of rigorous research and endorsed by American Academy of Pediatrics, American Medical Association, and like we talked about earlier, all of the leading health authorities. These bills not only display a fundamental lack of understanding for trans children, but they also ban access to medical care potentially by criminalizing either the doctors or providers or parents of trans youth seeking to provide best practice medicine for children in their care. So it's really important to be aware of what is going on legally and to seek legal counsel when necessary. So this map, looking at it specifically, the little shields have state shield laws protecting access to transgender healthcare. The brown color have state bans of best practice medical and surgical care for trans youth. But the ban may or may not be in effect because there might be different injunctions happening. The lighter colored brown color have state bans specifically for surgical care for trans youth. The cream colored states do not have bans for best practice of medical care. And the ones with little red exclamation points have state bans that make it a felony crime to provide certain forms of best practice medical care for trans youth. So as we can see, there are quite a lot happening within our country right now. And again, it is ever changing. So it's really important to stay informed. The impact of these bans and these restrictions, as we could probably guess, have a pretty deep and vast impact. Even with kids and trans adults who are not in restrictive states, they're still seeing all of these things. They're still feeling them. Even trans or LGBTQ adults, 43% of these adults, according to the Human Rights Campaign and the Trevor Project, all of these stats, report that gender affirming care bans impact the physical and mental health of themselves or their loved ones. 80.1% of trans and non-binary adults report the same. 80.1. 79.1% of LGBTQ plus adults report that gender affirming care bans make them feel less safe as an LGBTQ plus person. And for trans and non-binary adults, the number increases to more than 9 and 10, 94% feel unsafe. And the overwhelming majority, 90% of LGBTQ plus youth and young people said that their well-being was negatively impacted due to the recent sociopolitical environment. Over half, 53%, said their well-being was negatively impacted by the sociopolitical environment a lot. Those are some big numbers. So as we can see, these current restrictions themselves negatively impact our clients and their caregivers. Again, by restricting this access to science, medically based, good medical care as supported by every major medical association. Poses significant health risks, disruption in healthy development of our clients, a loss of autonomy for our clients and their caregivers and their medical team, and significantly increased stress, emotional dysregulation, and have significant impact on us as providers to hinder us from providing the most ethical care that we can. They create, again, this fear, stress, health risk, even in states without the restriction, due to this anticipatory fear and constant view of discrimination or fear of discrimination they may have. We as healthcare providers have an ethical obligation to do what is in the best interest of our clients, and these restrictions can only deeply impact those decisions. So it is best to continue to seek consultation and understanding as best as we can for ourselves and for our clients and our caregivers. Some proactive steps that we can take, to be able to work through these potential restrictions and fears as best as we can. Number one, know your rights. Know your rights as a provider. Stay informed about local, state, and federal legal landscapes, and the accuracies of them. So you can best talk about these things with your clients as well and their caregivers. We want to build a support network as best as we can. So we want to connect with local organizations and advocacy groups to, again, make sure we're staying on top of everything that's happening, and also to have support through everything. We want to make sure that we're using correct legal documentation and correct evidence of support as appropriate. We want to consult with legal experts. That's so important here, especially while monitoring legal and policy changes. We want to seek this guidance to navigate these legal complexities and these unknowns. I mentioned earlier about myself that I was able to be present in the U.S. Supreme Court case recently. That one was related to a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment, in relation to trans youth in medical care. And that decision is not going to come through from the Supreme Court until probably mid-2025. So that's something to, again, just be aware of throughout an ever-changing landscape in different types of legal and policy changes. The interpretation of laws versus legal accuracy is really important. So it's always important to verify legal information. There might be various organizations that may try to stretch interpretations of various laws or bills to fit their own nefarious agendas, or accidentally have an incorrect interpretation of different laws or bills, which may accidentally, again, harm or remove care from different trans folks or youth or gender diverse youth. So it's really, really important to always verify the accuracy and seek counsel when you're unsure. Question different things as appropriate to just make sure that we're all doing the best that we can as providers and having the most up-to-date legal information. And we want to be aware of the uneven protections between the states, and the complications and the nuances that might be present. Navigating unknowns and fears. All of these complexities create all kinds of unknowns and fears, again, throughout us as providers, and also, of course, within our clients and their caregivers and their families. We have the honor to be able to sit with them throughout all of these unknowns and fears and be able to walk with them on that aspect of the journey that is unfortunately present, especially right now. So different things we can do to navigate those unknowns and fears and be proactive is we can ground ourselves as clinicians and providers. So we remember our personal truths and our values, and we can encourage and empower our clients and their caregivers and families to do the same. We know that we as providers have aspects of fear as well, and remembering to always ground ourselves will help us to have the tools to help other people. Unknowns in general are pretty terrifying. So, and unknowns in terms of basic rights and access to evidence-based medical care also increases those feelings of fear. So again, we want to evaluate and seek out accurate information. Verify before acting. Make sure before we take an action that we know the true complexities of the legal landscape and what is happening. We want to stay informed, but we want to create really healthy boundaries so that we can create that space to, again, ground ourselves and hold our personal truths and values strong. Continue to connect with advocacy groups and support networks. Create a flexible plan. It's flexible because the legal landscape is ever changing. So we want to make sure to have proper documentation. We want to know our rights and laws as providers and be able to educate laws and rights for clients and caregivers and family members. We want to Make sure to connect and continue to connect with different advocacy groups and support groups. Um, and especially when there are different fears involved, right? And fear based tactics that might be used within different potential organizations. So, again, creating healthy boundaries when seeking out information, encouraging yourself and caregivers and clients to take media breaks when appropriate to make sure to, again, remember personal values and truths because no one can take those away. And we need to remember that as we ground ourselves as providers and help to ground our clients and their caregivers. We want to also look for different types of action-oriented tasks if we have the capacity to, or if our caregivers have the capacity and the desire to have a task to do during all these unknowns and fears. Lots of different local organizations have different options and different suggestions for task-oriented support. And above all, I want to encourage all of us as providers and also to help encourage our clients and caregivers to remember that there are so many people still advocating, especially in the face of all of these unknowns, fears, and ever-changing legal landscape. Always remember to seek out joy and self-care to combat these aspects of fear. I know these times of unknowns and fear can seem really, really dark and scary, but we can still slow it down, ground ourselves, and seek out small moments of joy that people cannot take away, no matter how hard they try. Keep encouraging our clients and caregivers and ourselves to find these small moments of joy as an act of resistance and bringing something positive within our lives to hold on to. And this joy can look like anything that brings about joy. Whether it's taking care of some plants or reading a book or playing a video game or going outside, taking a hike, playing in the snow, hugging a pet, hugging a loved one, taking a nap. Like there are so many different aspects and so many different small things that can bring about joy. Having a good cup of coffee, having a funny pair of socks on, whatever that small thing is. I want to encourage that as best as I can. Especially because the most important thing to remember is that trans healthcare, gender affirming care, medical care is all life saving. We all deserve to be healthy and live our lives safely. This is what we're fighting for as providers as well. Basic medically based care and healthy development of our clients and healthy support from their caregivers. Because what we truly know and have had proved over and over again is that the research and the long-term outcomes for transgender individuals has grown significantly in the recent years. And it highlights the positive effects of gender-affirming care, social support, and inclusive environments. Throughout my references and resources, I have this in there time and time again to be able to reflect on and look at and be able to also reach your own conclusions as providers through all of the evidence and the care. I came across this quote as well that I wanted to share from Janet Mock, who is a Black and Native Hawaiian trans woman, writer and director, and a trans rights activist who openly speaks and advocates about her own identity and for the community itself. And she says, when I was younger, I wish I would have been told more often that I was right and nothing was wrong with me, that I was deserving of everything this world has to offer, and that my visions for my future were worthy of pursuit. I want us all to sit and reflect on that for a minute, because this is what we are truly doing as providers, to help our clients know that there's nothing wrong with them, that we are on this journey with them, and to help their caregivers, support system, family members, whomever they may want support with along the way, to educate, empower, advocate, join with, whatever that might look like for the dynamic that presents itself within our offices. We as providers really have the privilege to be the person to offer that support, to be able to continue healthy development. And that support, again, is worthy of pursuit and a positive future. Through all of this work, we as providers also have to take care of ourselves. We take care of so many people, and it's really, really, really important to reflect upon that and own and acknowledge that there's an emotional toll of working with caregivers and family members of different marginalized communities, because we can experience different types of vicarious trauma. It is hard to sit with somebody and family members and hear about all of the disparities, discrimination, everything that is going on, and how that all layers within one another. And it's important to acknowledge that. It's important to own that. I really appreciate you all sticking with me through everything, especially this tough previous section. I really want to emphasize that there is light throughout the darkness, and we as providers can really work together to move forward in the best interest of our clients and their caregivers and their families. And to be able to do that, again, we have to take care of ourselves. So we have to slow it down, take it one day at a time, one client at a time, one conversation at a time. A lot of different ways we can show up as providers. We do have to strike that balance and take care of ourselves. This emotional demands of supporting clients in general while navigating systemic challenges can really just lead to burnout, compassion fatigue, different things like that. There's an impact of this societal, socio-political messaging, intercommunal conflict. Everything just goes together. The same thing as we talked about with the cup for our caregivers also can happen to us as providers. We really have to be cognizant of that and have really good self-awareness. Establish healthy boundaries, detaching when appropriate, receiving supervision or consultation with other affirming providers can be really, really helpful and life-giving. Building connections with other professionals and collecting resources is a good way to have self-care, because we can just have those things ready to be able to provide for our clients. Professional development advocacy events can also be life-giving if we have the capacity at the time, and good healthy boundaries, if we don't, is also really important. Encouraging physical and emotional self-care to take care of ourselves, however that may look, because I know that looks different for all of us as humans. There's no one way or one box to put anyone in, and that's the same with physical and emotional self-care. We want to be able to cultivate joy and relaxation, seek out uplifting stories. We're all so good at doom scrolling, and we could shift that a little bit and scroll down and read different uplifting stories, or obtaining different knowledge about different things, fun facts and stuff like that. Celebrating successes within our own lives as providers, within our clients, reflecting on those successes, because we really reflect on the negative and the harm a lot, because those are our jobs. And reflecting on those successes, holding on to them, feeling them, can really help us to continue to keep moving forward. Practice compassion for self. We try to teach this and educate our clients and their caregivers and families every day. So we need to make sure that we are also practicing that for ourselves as well. One more quote from Janet Mock. She says, "I believe that telling our stories first to ourselves and then to one another and then the world is a revolutionary act." And I think that is true. We talk to ourselves, and then when we are able to tell the world and be who we are, that's what it's all about. And finally, to the resources section to put everything together. I have a lot of resources to share with everybody, and I'm really excited to be able to put all this together so that you can kind of sift through. So first section is going to have a lot of resources specifically that you can hand out to caregivers. This picture is just kind of like a screenshot of like tiny websites and different stuff. The list in general that you're going to receive is going to be a bunch of different links. It'll be a PDF, and you can click on the links on your computer. or phone or whatever. And then you'll be able to kind of check out the different resources. As you can see, there are a ton of them. I try to be as thorough as possible. These are different types of organizations or specific books or readings or websites or different things like that. So, for example, we have the Family Trans Lifeline Library, the American Academy of Pediatrics Family Acceptance Project, which has different cultural-based research resources, faith-based resources, and nationwide resources. We have the Child Mind Institute, Trans Care British Columbia, that's awesome resources, Trevor Project, Gender Spectrum, PFLAG, Human Rights Campaign, Movement Advancement Project, Trans Family Alliance. There's so many different resources available. I wanted to make sure you had a really good base to be able to share with caregivers. Different books here also, like the Trans Child and Teen Handbooks, have a lot of like clinical information, and then there's other ones on here for just navigating journeys and having different stories from other parents of trans kids, so like Raising Your Rainbow and stuff like that too. All of that could be really helpful for parents and caregivers and family members. I also have a section of different support networks for family members and caregivers. So, for example, FamilyTrans has an ally parent support group. PFLAG has a lot of different supports, and they have subgroups for different folks, even grandparents and different family members, to be able to gather support. The Grand Rapids Pride Center in West Michigan also has a lot of awesome groups, and so does the University of Michigan. I also included a lot of different chats and phone numbers to be able to call to get immediate support, especially crisis-oriented support. So I want to make sure to have those available for everybody. Included legal and academic support as well. I believe the academic is within the caregiver section, but here I combine it with legal. So it's really important, again, as providers and for caregivers to have access to these supports and to just know that they exist, right? So GLAD has a lot of the medical necessity statements. The Transgender Law Center is awesome. Transgender Equality, American Civil Liberties Union, Lambda Legal, Harvard Law, advocates for transgender equality, Human Rights Campaign. Those are all really awesome options that we can go towards for legal advice and counsel. For academics, we've got the National LGBTQIA+ Health Education Center, the U.S. Department of Education. Currently on their website has different information for LGBTQIA students. Transcare BC has an awesome array of documents for working within schools, and as does Gender Spectrum for gender inclusive schools and advocacy. Provider resources in general. I included a lot of different options here as well that were more specifically provider oriented. Of course, we as providers can also utilize any of the information within the caregivers resources too. All of it's good information. There's a lot of different trainings. Mount Sinai Center for Trans Medicine has some great trainings there currently. A book that I have used a lot is Trans Bodies, Trans Selves. There's multiple different resources within WPATH, the Standards of Care H, and the International Journal for Transgender Health. There's all kinds of different options for providers for trainings and for education and growth, multiple different things. Michigan specific, since that's where I'm located again, just wanted to be able to touch on some things too. The Michigan.gov resource list is very expansive for different resources all throughout Michigan. Then, of course, we have the Grand Rapids Pride Center, Family Trans, the Grand Rapids Trans Foundation, the Grand Rapids LGBTQ+ Health Consortium. Kent District Library has a lot of awesome resources. Transgender Michigan is a great page for resources. Equality Michigan and AYA Youth Collective. All of that are wonderful resources within Michigan to be able to check in on, add your resources list if appropriate, and continue to build what you might have in Michigan. Other state specific, being able to find different resources within your state and being able to create a little list like this will be an invaluable resource for you and tool. As I said, references and resources are attached separately, and you'll have access to all of those as well. And I really want to thank you for sticking with this webinar series and listening to this talk today. I know some aspects of this are probably redundant, but I think that was kind of intentional and really indicative of our dynamics as providers, because we see these different aspects, and sometimes it's easy to forget some of these nuances. So being able to try to go towards them and remember them in different ways and being said in different ways and over again can help to facilitate the understanding so that it comes just a lot more naturally as we continue to move through our careers as providers and really just do the best that we can for our clients, for their caregivers, for their family members, and for the career community in general. I have my contact information here, and I'm happy to connect and answer any questions via email, since this is obviously a recorded series and we didn't have the option for any Q&A time. So I would welcome any conversation, questions, anything at all. If you have a need for a specific resource maybe I didn't include, I might have it somewhere. I would be happy to help in any capacity. I again really appreciate you all, and I wish you all the best throughout your practices and throughout your careers. And I hope you all take good care.